Filthy rich. Filthy rich. I know you've heard the term. How do you feel about those who are rich? Where did this term come from? And, well, is it true? Are all rich people filthy? We'll look at the history and origin of this, rather loaded phrase in this episode of History of Everyday Sayings. Hello, I am your host, Stephen Carter, for History of Everyday Sayings. I do thank you for joining me for this episode. Who is this show for? If you are a philomath, a logophile, or someone who simply loves history tidbits you can share with family and friends, this is your show. Some time ago, I was holding a class on how to use a method called Positive EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. Positive EFT is a focus on how to use what is called positive tapping to achieve goals and, in general, just create more of a sense of happiness and well-being. During the affirmation part of that training, one of the participants raised her hand and she said, "Steve, I really want to achieve financial wealth, but whatever I do, it just doesn't seem to show up in my life." She went on to chronicle some of the efforts that she's put forth to gain financial well-being, and I said to her, I would like you to finish this sentence. Rich people are, and immediately she added, greedy. Rich people are greedy. Everyone in that class understood the problem that this young lady was having. While consciously she wanted to achieve wealth and financial well-being, but her belief system was not supportive of that goal, because at her core, she believed rich people were greedy, and if she truly believed that, which I think clearly she did, why would she, at a subconscious level, want to allow herself to become one of those greedy people? I think we have all had a love-hate relationship with the idea of wealth. We see people who we perceive as wealthy who are into excess, and at one level we tell ourselves, well, no, that is absolutely not me. And yet, these people are, in our minds, in our beliefs, wealthy. So the idea that wealth is going to equal excess, greed, and in many cases, actual unhappiness. Thus, we arrive at the term we'll be working with in this show, filthy rich. Filthy rich. What exactly does filthy rich mean? Let's go to Merriam-Webster.com. We find the definition is informal, really simply put, extremely rich, used to imply that a person's wealth is excessive or offensive. Used to imply that a person's wealth is excessive or offensive. An example sentence they're using, I happen to know that the woman is filthy rich and can well afford to compensate you. Examples on the web from Merriam-Webster.com, and that's Merriam-Webster.com. From Nate Davis, USA Today, 25 April 2023. Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts, 24, is filthy rich, exponentially improving between the lines and under the contract for the next 6 years with a no-trade clause. Bretton Blanchett in People Mag from 7 January 2023. The next drawing will take place on Tuesday to determine who, if anyone, will become filthy rich. And from someone named A. Dowd, D-O-W-D, in a publication called Crone, 16 November 2022, Foodies, Celebrity Chefs, the Filthy Rich. This is low-hanging fruit for a satirist. For further clarification, we go to gingersoftware.com. They tell us, filthy rich, quote, the term filthy rich was formerly used to discuss someone who was very wealthy and who possibly became rich under unfair means. Today, the phrase's meaning has softened a bit and is often used to talk about someone who is extremely rich, even if they become wealthy by honest means. The example that they cite, the preacher and his wife moved into a mansion. Suddenly, they're filthy rich. Interesting facts about filthy rich. Although the term filthy rich can be traced back to a 16th century iteration, the exact phrase was first used during the 1920s, as illustrated in a 1929 edition of an Ohio newspaper called the Lima News, in a story discussing the effects of the Great Depression when people were forced to sell their homes or starve. There is a depressed market. If any of our stock gambling filthy rich want a winter home, now is the time to acquire it. Close quote. When we go to one of my favorite sources, phrases.org.uk, what's the meaning of the phrase filthy rich? This site tells us the meaning is very rich, possibly having become so under unfair means. What's the origin of the phrase, filthy rich? This little phrase cannot be explained without looking at the word lucra. From the 14th century, lucra has meant money and is referred to as such by no less writers than Chaucer and John Wycliffe. These references generally included a negative connotation and gave rise to the term foul lucra and filthy lucra, which have been in use since the 16th century. Filthy lucra appears first in print in 1526 in the works of William Tinsdale. Quote, teaching things which they ought not, because of filthy lucra. Teaching things which they ought not, because of filthy lucra. Tinsdale was using the term to mean dishonorable gain. Following on the term filthy lucra, money became known by the slang term the filthy, and it's not such a great leap from there to the rich being called the filthy rich. This was first used as a noun phrase meaning rich people who have become so by dishonorable means. It was used that way in America, where it was coined from the 1920s onward. Here's an item from the Ohio newspaper, the Lima News, February 1929. Get-rich-quick attitudes of some who were exploiting those who had to sell their homes at unreasonably low prices in order to eat during the economic crash. And the article goes on to cite the two sentences I shared earlier. This is a depressed market. If any of our stock gambling filthy rich want a winter home, now is the time to acquire it. As time went on, the negative associations have softened somewhat. It has now become to mean extremely rich rather than dishonorably rich, although there may still be a trace of an unfavorable implication associated with it. Close quote for phrases.org.uk. By the way, all of the sources that I have cited here, they'll all be available for your investigation, if you would like to go deeper, you'll find those sources in the show notes, also known as the episode description. So is it any wonder that so many people have a challenge with the idea of becoming wealthy or rich? Just like the lady who immediately completed the sentence, rich people are greedy. How many of us want the dirt? None of us want to feel dirty. Whether it's filthy lucra from the 1500s or filthy rich from the 20th century and on, even today. If you would like to become more wealthy, I suggest having a look at your beliefs about wealth and about rich people. If you're not yet following History of Everyday Sayings, this is a perfect time to subscribe or follow where you get your podcasts. When you follow, you will never miss an episode, and of course, it is free to follow the podcast. If you would like to be in touch for any reason, email me at cartermethod@gmail.com, cartermethod@gmail.com, to listen to previous episodes of History of Everyday Sayings and an array of other podcasts, guaranteed to entertain and to help you relieve stress. Visit us at stressreliefradio.com, stressreliefradio.com. Until our next visit together, your host here, Stephen Carter, wishing for you and your loved ones blessings in abundance.